All right, so we've looked at front-end editing, at logging in, at publishing. So let's look now at class management from the front end. So I'm going to go to this very class that we're looking at, clicking on My Classes. And then looking at Impartable 101. And then Impartable 101 is a nested class. So inside Impartable 101 are a lot of classes. The one I'm interested in is back-end and front-end management. And here I am at my class level, and I'm looking at it as the owner and administrator of the class. And I've called those people teachers, so I'm the teacher of this class. And we're going to have a look at editing the class itself. So if you would like to edit a class, then the way you do that is clicking on the edit button. And if you want to create a new class, then you click on the new class button. It's important to know kind of where you are in the setup structure. So I'm going to do what I've just done again and just go through it slowly, clicking on My Classes. So what I do when I click on My Classes is I go to the faculty the overriding faculty of whatever class structure I'm in. And this one is simply called Classes. You'll look at the setup and structure of your faculty and classes later on. So this one's called Classes. And inside Classes, I've only got one class in this faculty, and it's called Impartable 101. And you'll see that even in the structure here that there are 7 classes within this class. So this structure is what we call nested classes, and it enables us to have classes within faculties. And those terms are all interchangeable, so you could call them whatever you'd like. Courses as opposed to classes, or areas as opposed to faculties, however you'd like to structure that. So I'm going to click on the Impartable 101 class, and inside that class are a number of nested classes, and they could have their own nested classes inside of them too. And now I'm going to click on Backend and Frontend Management class, and here is my class. Now I know where I am as I'm editing it. The class has both an edit information section as well as an about section. It has a wall, video, photos, files, events, forums, a members list, as well as an invite section where I can invite people to the class. So let's have a look at editing this particular class. On my right toolbox, class toolbox here, I see I have new class, and then I have edit class. I'm going to click on edit class. The class is published. It's in the faculty of classes. I could move it into an archive faculty once the class is finished. It has a parent class, which means that it is a nested class. It has a name, which you can set to whatever you want it to be. There is a description section, which you saw above the tabs of the class, and that happens over here, and you've got your full editor to use for the description, so you could make that quite intense if you'd like to. The class has a logo which you can upload, delete for the default logo. You can upload a new one, and you can set the class logo. Type of class is open. There's 3 types of classes. Open means that it'll be available, at least visible, to anyone who has the correct access level. In this case, it's only available to people with administrator level and above. If it's set to approval, then it's also visible to them. They can join the class, but they aren't automatically joined to the class. The administrator or the class owner or teacher needs to approve them before they become part of the class. The last one is invite. An invite means that the class is invisible to anyone, even administrators, unless they were specifically invited to the class. And that's the same type structure right through the Impartable setup for classes. In this particular class, we have set up the invite access to class members, so class members can invite new people to the class. They have to be administrator level before they can join it, but members can invite. You can set that to moderators, admins, and class teachers, and we'll look at how those structures work later on in the Impartable setup. We've set the members to public. In other words, public is a relative term when it comes to working with classes. It means public within the Impartable installation, and so anyone who's in the Impartable installation can see the members of this particular class. We've set that to yes. We've set enable to nested to enable. I'm going to set that to disable because I don't want anyone to create a new level of nested classes underneath this class, so I'm going to set that to disable. Nested access is also to disable because other class members can create classes. This is particularly useful if you have a set of material and a lot of students, a MOOC in other words. Let's say you have a set of video material and written material, and you have about 10 or 15 or 30,000 students. That's not a very easy way to teach them if they're all part of one class. What you could do is you could create the class, make it a nested class, and then let teachers create classes underneath that. So you could set your nested access to teachers, and then whoever gets given the teacher level in that class, or the moderator level, or whatever you want to do in that class, they can then create their own subclasses or nested classes and use the same material to teach. And then that's a good way to administrate a very, very large class. The teacher level is set to 42. That's my ID number. That's not something you need to worry about too much for now. We'll get into user levels and user management later on. The integration pieces that I showed you earlier about wall, video, photo, file, events, forum, they're managed over here. And I can set any of these to display or not to display. At the moment I've got them all set to enable, and the display to enable, and I could set that to disable if I'd like to. And I've got them all set to public. So, well, not all of them. Some of them are not set to public. The class discussion walls, for example, they're enabled, but anyone who's looking at this class from the outside, let's say another administrator who hasn't joined this class, they wouldn't be able to participate or even view the wall unless they were part of the class. You can also set a class that allows public viewers. Remember that public is a relative term. Public means within when you're dealing with classes, it means within the Impartable installation. You can have a class set to public if you'd like to, and then allow anyone as part of that to contribute to the class. The approve, disable, enable button allows you as the class owner or administrator to have the rights to approve or block any of the comments that are made. It makes for a lot of administration, but you might have a class that you'd like to do that with. The same settings are true for virtually all of them: the video section, the photo section, the file section. You might choose to have files switched off and use the file upload tool that I spoke about earlier, maybe in the about or the wall section of the class. It's up to you how you like to manage that. Events and the class forum. In this case, I'm going to set the class forum to disable because we don't need a forum for it. But a forum is useful If you are wanting to engage with your class members in the wall, but you want to engage with the general public of the website, relative term, through a different set of tools, and then you would have a class forum to do that. Update class. Tells me that the class has been saved successfully, and if I look at any of these tabs and click on them, then I'm able to see the changes that I've made. Here's the About section. If you'd like to edit the About section, you saw where we edited the information section, the class description. That's done through the Edit Class button. If you'd like to edit the About section, that's done through here, Edit About. And it's the same set of tools, so you could put in links and images and all kinds of things in the Class About section. A few other things about the class editing tools. You can message all the members of the class in one go if you'd like to, and you can allow either members or just moderators and administrators to do that. You can unpublish a class without deleting it. You can delete a class. Very important to remember as we get deeper into Impartable, there's not a lot of leeway with deleting things. If you delete a class, it's gone. And that's very important to remember. If you've got a class you've built up over a number of months and you hit the delete button, well, then that class is gone. This does give you a warning. In the back end, there are very few warnings. So just bear that in mind. You need to keep your wits about you when you're editing your class content. We can, of course, always get to a backup. We could restore from a backup if you did delete something that you didn't mean to, but because it's a dynamic environment and people are always uploading and adding content, then we can only back up to a certain point, generally to the previous day, before we start to lose the content that people have already put in. Class notifications can be set for each individual user. Let's say a particular class is sending a lot of emails for the class content, maybe the class wall. Then I can choose to set my class notification for the wall to be off, and then I'll go and look at it myself when I'd like to. And the same is done for the faculty. For general notifications, I can choose how notifications work for me individually as a user of the site, and everyone has the same ability to change the notifications. Okay, let's look quickly at actually adding some content to the class. I'm going to add a wall post. Again, you'll notice that the same set of tools appear for your wall posts, and so I could put whatever I like in here. And this then becomes a discussion point around which we can tackle whatever topic it is that we're addressing. Wall posts appear as a conversation, social media type conversation, and you're able to reply to wall posts, and so the conversation can be fairly robust and lengthy, and yet remain contained within the group that belongs to this particular class. Video is handled through online tools like Vimeo or YouTube. We have the ability to host video, but we really don't recommend that at all. We think it's much better to use those established tools, and so you would link to whatever the URL is. You'd put it in over here, the title of the video and the caption. You'll see how that works when I put this video that we're looking at into the video section of this particular class. The same goes for photos. As you add photos to your class, it becomes a gallery for that particular class. Events could be published for each class. I'm going to publish one quickly to show you, and then those events are accessible, and a notice is sent out to every class member, and then they can RSVP to those events. So let's say we're going to do a Hangouts, a Google Hangouts. And we can give that event a little bit more of a description. In this case, the location is going to be Google Hangouts. I could put in a URL into this location, which is pretty useful. That means that students getting the notification just have one click and they can go straight to the Hangout. The address in this case does not matter. Let's say the date is going to be the end of the month, and the time is going to be 10:30 in the morning. Bear in mind that each user can set their own time preferences, and so if they're in another part of the world or another time zone, then the time will automatically be corrected for them. And I'm going to schedule this event. The event is saved and one person is attending, and as people reply to that, this will be populated with more attending or not attending or still undecided. The member section gives me a link directly to the user's profiles, and that's pretty useful for creating connections and outside of class relationships. Invites enables me to invite people to the class. I can use an email address or a username in Impartable, or I could use a connection that I have. Let's say I have a friend that I've made already in the class in Impartable, and I can use that connection to invite them to the class. And in the edit class section, I can decide who I'd like to be able to send invites. So that could just be me, it could be nobody, it could be members of the class, it could be moderators, etc. I could also use the members section to manage the members. There is a manage members button over here too, but in the members section you can upgrade or downgrade members to be moderators, administrators, or owners of the class. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of the classes. In terms of creating new classes from the front end, it's very much the same. I'll just click on new class. It'll always put my class in the nested environment that it was in before. At this stage, I don't want to create a back-end and front-end management nested class. If you remember, I disabled that. It overrides for me as a super administrator, but I don't want to do that. In fact, I don't want to create a nested class at all. I want this to be a top-level class. I want it to be in the faculty of classes. Then the settings are very much like I've described all the way through. That's the default logo. You could override that with your own logo right the way through. If you have a class that you've now completed, you maybe have 10 or 12 members, you can always move members, move the class from the open faculty, whatever that faculty is, whatever the faculty structure is, into the archive structure, and that way the class then gets moved out of the way and you can create a new one. And that's very easy to do. You just edit the class and you click on the archive link, and that class is then moved out of the way and space is made for the new class. Also important to remember when you're dealing with class members, if you're in class management, let me go back to that. If you're dealing with class members, let's say I've got a string of members over here. If I click on one and delete that member, I'm not deleting them from Impartable, I'm just deleting them from that particular class. So those terms are important to understand what we mean. When you're dealing within classes, it's a relative term. Things like private or public are relative to the Impartable setup, and things like delete are relative to the class itself. Okay, so that's classes in a nutshell, just looking at the front-end management of them. Next, we'll look at managing profiles before we look at the back end.